Yeah. Gal had been sitting on the toilet and the floor fell out from underneath her feet.
I hate to say this, but I have owned a house like that before.
Yeah, Susan Mobile saw it.
One of those leaking slow leaks that
That was one of the first things I talked about was the Italian, family
Who are some of you guys? Share some stories about Greg. Funniest thing that ever happened. How about a brother? Something that he really made your mom mad about.
Everything?
Everything.
I'll say a few words, okay? But it's not just a funny story, but
Just whatever.
some sentiments about Greg. I'll go first. But, anyway, I'm Greg's youngest brother, Matt. Devastated that he's no longer with us, of course.
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah, don't step backwards.
Anyway, no, Greg was a great, a great brother and a real motivating factor in my life. He was a character. We all know that. In fact, I think he made our family more interesting. He was, by the way, he was Joey in The Kids Are All Right. He was very proud of that. Probably the most interesting character, well, maybe second most interesting, Tim. Okay. But no, Greg made our family more interesting.
Was Lawrence the most annoying character? Come on, a show of hands.
That was you, right?
No, that was Dennis.
So, but no,
He's not here to defend it.
I know, that's why I chose that.
He's on Zoom.
Sorry about that, Dennis.
growing up, Greg and I weren't terribly close because he was one of the older brothers and I'm the youngest. But he always struck me as being, I think, really the first really cool brother.
Chopped liver?
First one. Okay, well, look.
Come on.
Look, the first two were in the seminary, so they weren't.
That's true.
They weren't getting much
Well,
action.
yeah, the
so.
bar was pretty low.
But no, Greg. My most vivid memory of Greg was he built this really elaborate clubhouse, which we all came to be known as the Shack. And it was this wasn't just some treehouse. This was a fully constructed property.
Air conditioning, a foundation, running water.
Yeah, it was cement, drywall.
Playboy Mansion, Glendale.
All right.
When the garage started to fall apart, the shack was holding it up.
And Greg, yeah, it was amazing. He was like 16. He built this thing. And, once he got it all done, he put in the bean bags, black light, fluorescent
Full bar,
posters,
library.
All the groovy stuff.
Yeah. So I was a little too young to understand what actually was going on in there. But
I wasn't. I was in there.
did he actually let you in, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he needed me because He said I was a conversation piece. I kept
like an odd sculpture
with him and his friends. All the interesting developments of my adolescence, all those incremental things, they all happened in the shack.
All I can say is I didn't fully understand what went on there. Although I do know he had a very elaborate air circulation system. I have no idea why, but anyway.
And when they tore it down, the bottles and stuff were found under the floorboards.
Oh well, yeah. I don't know anything about that. Yeah. But
when the garage came down.
Oh, the garage came down first. At the shack, you really had to take a wrecking ball to it.
Yeah, the shack was like the pyramids. It was built for time.
It would still be standing.
well, Greg was, he was out there pretty much every night, and a lot of guests, brothers, a lot of female guests. Okay, sorry, Lynn.
People back there all the time.
But what I do remember is my father, he would he would get pissed off because Greg would be out there so late, and so he'd come out there at midnight. He'd bang on the door, and Greg would, of course, ignore it. So ultimately, there was a way he could shut off the power to the shack, and by going into the garage, and so my dad would start shutting off the power. And, so Greg would be in there with, some girl with the music going and everything, and then all of a sudden, everything would stop and everything would go blank. So Greg was just too clever. So he figured out a way around this. He figured out a way to bypass the power box in the garage. So one day when the parents were gone somewhere, he went into the backyard, he dug a trench, laid some conduit and some wiring back, and connected the shack directly to the house. So he figured a way around that. So my father wasn't able to shut off his power and shut off the fun that he was having. But no, he was clever. He was entrepreneurial. He was a smart guy. I got to be very close with Greg when he started his business. He ran a company called Complete Graphics in Glendale, California. He was also the co-founder of LA Parent Magazine, which is still publishes to this day. He and his friend Jack Bierman. He was kind enough to hire me to work for him, and it was a lot of fun. I was like 15 at the time. Greg was like 23, and he ran his own business at age 23, and he was like out there talking to clients, making sales, hustling the different people. It was amazing. I mean, if you think about your typical 23-year-old male nowadays, I mean, he's probably riding around on a skateboard with a ponytail, living in his parents' basement or something. But this was Greg. I didn't mean to touch a nerve there.
Yeah. Too close to home.
But Greg was quite impressive, and he was a great boss, and it was fun to work for him. We worked really hard, and I know, Lynn, you got dragged into it, and several of the other brothers worked there too. But we worked hard, and I mean, I was able to work all through my high school and most of college for him, and he was kind enough to work around my schedule where I could, do my schoolwork and participate in sports and that sort of thing. But it was quite a learning experience, and it was, with Greg, you definitely worked hard, and I think his motto was, we work hard and we play hard. And when I was old enough to get my license and drive, I was definitely a designated driver for after a lot of our events and activities. But anyway, it was an amazing experience. I learned a lot from Greg, just the entrepreneurial side of things, how to manage people, how to supervise. He taught me customer service, things that that really helped me later on in life. And for that, I will just treasure that time that we had together. And of course, we stayed close, many years beyond that, even after he moved up here. But Greg was an amazing guy. He was, as I've said, very entrepreneurial, very hardworking. A lot of people don't realize he was a real optimist, and I think that led to many ventures in life that he pursued, both in Southern California and up here. And some of those were successful, and some of those were not. But he had that drive, he had that ability to go on and really succeed in life, and take a lot of people with him. And I think a lot of people here can appreciate that. Greg's optimism was really tested in the last year. When he got ill, when he got sick, it had to have been just hellacious to go through what he did, and it must have been really hard. But we would talk about once a week, and every time I talked to him, he was sure he was going to get through this. He was going to get the transplant, and we talked about family, we talked about friends, we talked about current events, and he had all kinds of ideas of what was going to happen when he got better. and there were a lot of great plans and a lot of things that he wanted to accomplish. The saddest part was, and I don't know if Lynn is aware of this, but he really wanted to have a big party for you for this birthday that would have been last January. He and I were talking. It was probably in fall, and he was just saying, "Gosh, you know, Lynn has been so good to me, and she's done so much to care for me throughout this illness." And you know, I want to do whatever I can to thank her for that and show my appreciation and gratitude. And I guess it would have been kind of a significant birthday for you, right?
And I had that in January, yes.
Yes. So, but unfortunately, I mean, it never happened. But he really, really wanted to have that party this past January, and you know, it wasn't meant to be. But you know, for me, it crystallized how much, you know, he appreciated you, Lynn, and how much he cared for you, and how much he loved you. And I'll say this from the bottom of my heart. I you know, now that he's not here, I want to say, you know, you'll always be a part of the Doyle family. And you know, if you ever need anything, you know, the brothers will always be here for you. So, anyway, I think I've said all I have, and I didn't mean to make people cry or anything. But you know, Greg always. He always enjoyed a great party, and I'm sure he's looking down on us right now, and very proud. Even though somebody else, you know, took care of the tri-tip,
And did a hell of a good job, Pat. Come on, a shout out for Pat.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you all for being here. I mean, this is really a wonderful testament to Greg, and you know, Greg, wherever you are, you know, God bless you. We love you and we miss you. So.
There's a point where you know, my folks got a little bit old and couldn't host things, and so all of that stuff moved over to Lynn and Greg's house, and so I can't even remember how many anniversaries and Christmases and special occasions we hosted at their place. And yeah, I think that's a testament to Greg. He really, even though he didn't have a big family, I mean, he loved his immediate family. And even after they moved up north here to this beautiful property, which I can't blame him for moving up here because it's really gorgeous. You know, he wanted to keep the family thing going, and so he would orchestrate these elaborate camping trips where we would go, and there was a core group of 4 or 5 of us, and then we'd pull in a brother here and there. And you know, when you go on a camping trip, it's physical activity. You're hiking for miles and all this kind of stuff. These were the only camping trips where actually you would gain 5 pounds on the trip, because Greg would spend a disproportionate amount of time planning these elaborate meals, which were actually better than anything I ever ate as a child at my home. We were raised on grizzle, basically. But Greg liked his tri-tip, he liked his potatoes and the vegetables and all that kind of stuff and things. And then at the point where, you know, my mother had dementia, and so we moved her to Kansas City, and Greg, my brothers all came out and visited at certain points. I would say Greg was definitely a regular visitor. He would come out at least once a year. It was usually in conjunction with the Talkers Convention, so I think it was a Spence account thing where he was able to charge it to somebody else. but he'd come out, and I'd give him the nickel tour, Liberty Memorial, and all the different things in Kansas City and stuff like that. But Greg was the hardest person on the planet to cook for, because not that he wasn't appreciative, but he's like, oh, you're cooking ribeyes. Wouldn't they be a little bit better with a lobster tail on top? Oh, what's the wine pairing you're doing with these? And this kind of stuff. So they always were a little bit elaborate. But I'll just say that I love Greg. I used like Matt. I probably talked to him at least once a week. And I know the past year was really tough for him, but he was always optimistic. He was actually more optimistic than I was, and when it came down to the end, I was surprised. But Godspeed. I loved him, and best to him.
And I can't thank you enough for how many nights you'd come up here. Don't, I'm gonna cry. But Pete, Mexican train, and doggone that, Greg would always beat us. No matter what I did, I thought, I got this down, I know what I'm doing. Beat us every time. But we'd have so much fun coming up here and having this tri-tip and playing Mexican train and enjoying some wine, because I know Greg loved a good bottle of wine, and I just want to say thank you for it. And I'm gonna cry.
I worked with Greg for about 16 years. Some stories I can't tell. Still? Sorry. But Greg was a person, I was his employee, and he told me at one point I wasn't his favorite.
That was a hell of a review.
But, the thing with Greg, though, and I guess one of the points is that Greg told me that because he saw something in me and he kept me around.
He wanted to see you grow.
Yeah, and he later, in a few years, became a mentor. And then the last probably 7 years, he became one of my dear friends. And he was a person, after I had struggled from some strokes and things, he was always there calling and always being there. There's two things with Greg, is that he had this bravado, he had this appearance that, he wanted people to see him as a certain type of person. The crazy Doyle boy. There was a side of Greg, I worked real close with him, and there was such an amazing tenderness that he had, that it really took me aback when I first saw it. We had an employee that passed away, and Greg would call me into his office Friday. Every 2 weeks he'd call me into the office and he'd give me a check and he'd say, please take this to Anita, the widow. And Greg, for about 4 or 5 months, kept paying Anita so that she could recover financially. And I know a lot of us, just about everyone here from DMI and TRN, myself included, when things got tough and we were struggling, where a normal employer wouldn't notice, Greg would call you in and he'd ask what's going on, and he would do anything and everything in his power to help. And the tenderness that was in that man's heart was shocking. It was just amazing. He was so giving and so thoughtful and so kind. And then the moment the door opened and we walked out, he was harassing and ripping into people and being Greg the way no one else could. I had the joy of traveling with him to New York and Marina del Rey a lot, and it was always a joy. Even though I was working 16 hours a day, he would always make those trips the best. And the other thing that was great about Greg was his love of his brothers and his family. When we watched the TV show, I knew all the stories. I knew Uncle Tom, and I shocked you. I go, hey, you're Uncle Tom's daughter. And I told her all the stories about Uncle Tom because I knew him, because Greg, kind of in those quiet times where we would just sit at the bar and talk, it was, Tim, he loved you so much and was so proud of you. Not because of your accomplishments, but just because of your creativity. And I think that what you guys played off of each other so much. He admired you, and he was not in a way of a braggart or anything. He just really appreciated your accomplishments and was so proud of you. He was so proud of everyone. I mean, Chris, Dan, the whole Dennis, everyone. I knew all of your degrees. I knew where you went to school. I knew what instruments your children played. I know everything about the Doyle family, to the point where I think when I saw Dan the day before, you know, the last couple of days, well, the day Greg passed, you know, I could just sit, and it was almost like sitting with the best friend and visiting. You know, your parents must have been amazing, and your family's amazing, and Greg cherished each and every one of you. I wish I was a Doyle. That's all I can say.
No, you don't. Come on.
Well, other than eating your mom's food, I think maybe. I still want to see what those fish sticks look like. And what it was like to eat at the table, you know, you guys in the table, and then they would go and actually have a meal like a human. So, but anyway, I hope I get to at least shake your hands and meet those of you that I haven't. So, I've had so much happen in the last little bit when Greg died that I haven't really had a chance to mourn. But he was amazing. He was a great friend, and I learned so much from him. Always miss him for the last day.
Here, here.
Here, here.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet. You guys have been really great what you've talked about Pops. He's been a big inspiration in my life and taught me a lot of things. I've done a lot of wrong things. He's corrected me. What are you laughing for?
I don't.
You know, he helped me put my business together and get me to where I am today. And to see that strong man leave us really hurt me a lot. But I still feel in my heart that he's here right now with us. And I hope you all feel the same way. Greg touched all of our lives. That's why you all are here. Greg sat in that jacuzzi every dang night. I mean,
can attest to that.
yeah, and it's like, Greg, really? What are you doing? Oh, I want to go sit in the jacuzzi. But he was a brilliant, brilliant man in business. And after he passed in all this corona stuff, and then my business kind of went awry, I always looked up to the heavens and went, what do I do? I don't know what to do. It was like, he kind of said, hey, figure it out for yourself, young man. So, but he was so brilliant in business. It was insane. You give him a $10 bill, tomorrow he'll give you a $100 bill. Right? That's the way he was. And he was my pops. My biological father's dead, but he was my pops. And you've been married 39, 40 years?
39 years this year.
39 years.
Together 41.
Yeah. He took, how do I want to say this? He took such great care of my mother. And he was such a great man to my mom. I don't know where I'm going with this, but he needs the biggest trophy ever. I mean,
To live with me.
well, and put up with me.
Yeah, put up with you.
That damn kid. We'll kick him out of there. So, but he took care of my mom. That's the best part. And he was a great man. He was, I don't know what else to say. I'm not a good speaker. Not like Matt. Where is he?
Here, here.
Here, here.
So my name's Erica. A lot of you might know my dad, Bill Crawford. Him and Greg were the best of friends. So my dad is not like a Doyle family. So for those of you who know my dad, he is a very, very, very private man. I don't even really know my uncles and aunts. He was a solo show that came here to Grants Pass and started anew with TRN and was part of the whole family here. And him and Greg have been friends my entire life. I don't actually really have a young childhood memory predating when Greg was around. I think they've been good friends, best friends since I was 5 years old. I was very young. And my dad passed in last August, actually. And I had to deal with a lot of that, from the cancer to the memorial and stuff. And my dad's family is not really there, but Greg was there every day for me. Every day he came to the hospital. Every day he talked to me. Every day he took care of me. And it was more like an uncle than I have ever experienced in my life. And it was so endearing and so caring. And my dad, very much like Greg, is a big foodie, right? When they were partners in that. They would go around, they would fly around, go to the best restaurants, have the best wine. And when we put up my dad's memorial, Greg's like, okay, so this is the food we need to get, here's the wine we need to get, we need to make sure it's just right. And he really made sure it was utterly perfect. And Greg, the reason I'm bringing this up is that Greg was so caring. Not only was he the ultimate family man and brother, and gosh, did he love you, Lynn. It's a whole nother level right there, what people dream of. But he was the best friend I have ever seen in my entire life. Anybody be to anybody. My dad has never had a better friend than Greg. He was not only his partner in crime, but in business, and they got in trouble together, they got out of trouble together. They were just really good friends. And I just appreciate him so much, and I had to come back up here to be here and meet his family, which I have, heard so much about, but never got the chance to meet myself, because he was the most special man. And this right here, when I walked in here, Lynn, when Greg and I were planning my dad's memorial, of course you talk, well, this would be nice, and this would be nice, and this would be nice. And I walk in here and I go, this is exactly what Greg would have wanted. His friends, his family, his jacuzzi, his house. It's exactly what he would want. It is so utterly perfect, down to the tri-tip. It's really amazing. And I know that he's here with us today, and he is actually so happy to see all of you here and together and honoring a memory in a way that would make him proud. And in my view, he's Uncle Greg, and I'm really happy to have been a part of his life and for him to have cared for me and my dad the way he did, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all.
Okay, my name is Erin. Greg was my boss and like a father figure to me. I don't know if I can do it. Oh boy, lots of good times with Greg. Lots of good lunches with Eric and Greg. Yeah, appletinis, yeah.
It started with that.
Yeah. Greg and Bill were great. Both of them, all of us, we all worked together very well. Greg was a protector of me. I had a lot of times where another man that was the main boss did not treat me real well. And Greg protected me and kept me from harm. He's a good man, and I'll miss him very much. I went to see him when he was in the nursing home. I went to see him when he was in the hospital, and I saw him just before he passed. And I'm glad that I got to say goodbye and hold his hand. He was still smiling and laughing and being Greg, telling jokes until the day he passed.
Perfect hair.
Good hair, yeah.
Perfect hair.
To Greg's hair.
Great smile.
He did say, don't mess up my hair when I gave him a hug. Don't mess up my hair. That was always his thing, for sure. There was a lot of things that he had in his office. He had certain things. When my boys would come into the office, he had this duck game. And it was on his shelf. and he'd let the boys sit there and shoot at these ducks as long as they wanted. They could stay in his office and shoot those ducks. And he loved my boys. He was great to my boys, and they'll miss him too. So that's all I have to say.
Hear, hear.
Don't point that at me.
It's okay. Don't worry. It won't be on YouTube till tomorrow.
Too. For me, as I'm a chaplain with Racers for Christ. It's kind of like being a chaplain to bikers with boats, is what I do. And I have never been in a situation like like with Greg, to where you know, I knew him sporadically. He helped me. We have a building. We have a Baskin Robbins. He kept coming by, wanting me to put charter in it. Put charter in it. I got charter at home. I hate it. Why do I want charter? And so I said, okay, put charter in. Then he came back. He says, well, you can't put charter in. We need 4 other tenants to do it. And so I went to all the tenants, because I own the building. They don't want charter. And so he goes, we just need to get them to say they want it. Because if they say they want it, we can put it in, then they can cancel. And so you know how many charter bills I had to pay till they all canceled it? But Greg was probably the first person that I've been around when he knew he was going to pass away. He did. He knew that. I got you here. You're going to have to wait till I can say all this. He wasn't done. Okay, there wasn't one breath left in Greg that was saying that he was finished. And for all you guys, I mean, he's left such a mark on your life. Are you doing the same to somebody? And all of us are leaving marks, trust me. You know Patrick, right? So
don't bring me into this.
Okay, but we're all leaving a mark on somebody, and Greg did that on every one of you guys, and it was a good mark. It really was. And so he's not done yet, because he lives on in you guys. He really does. And he made, you know, what an impression. Thank you so much for everybody for sharing. You know, it's neat to get to share with Greg. When he closed his eyes in death, you know, I got to pray with him. Make sure that, you know, God didn't leave us without hope. If you're here today and you're looking around, it's pretty weird times, okay? Pretty weird times right now. I don't care if you have faith or you don't have faith.
We prayed together.
But there's no need to be fearful of what happens when you close your eyes in death. You know, and he'd want me to tell you that. Okay, he knew for sure that he knew Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. Okay, God did not send his son just as a passing glance. Okay, he sent him so that we could not be without hope. And I found that on an aircraft carrier in 1975, and I haven't been the same since. And I was probably like Greg. My brother told me, there's only 2 in my family, but my mom told my brother if I would have been born first, he would not have been born. Okay, so I mean, Greg was probably like that, or maybe first brother here the same. But you know, you can be sure that Greg is. He's looking at us right now. He's looking at all you guys. He loves you. He's pretty probably humbled, you know, by what he's heard today. And you know, let him live on in your life. Look at the example he was, and you be that example too. So I've only spread ashes once on helped on an aircraft carrier, and it blew all over the hangar bay. So
This is the expert.
okay.
Well, I think the wind.
It's getting kind of windy. It's coming.
Come on, Cliff. You can help us.
Come on, Cliff.
Okay, everybody downwind, watch out.
My best friend. My husband. I loved him so much. And I miss him every day.
You're still here with us, Greg? You always will be.
Yes, I think the crows that we have here that we've never had before, I think we keep having some crows. Woo, good job.
everybody.